Sup guys, Fat Archon here, bringing another 40k Tactica. Today we're going over what might be one of the sleeper hits for Chaos Space Marines, the Dread Talons, aka the Night Lords. So, while I was initially pretty down on these guys, after putting like actual thought into them, considering some of their combos, looking at their stratagems and all that sort of stuff, I think they might have some real play, like even at the competitive level. So in this video, we're going to do a full-on detachment review, go over all the rules, enhancements, stratagems, some of the units I think will key off them especially well. And at the end of this video, I actually have a few lists I want to show you guys that'll hopefully give you an idea of like the direction you take them, some of the themes you can work with, that sort of stuff. As always, if you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing. Each little bit helps, so if you don't mind taking that 1 second to hit that thumbs up, it'd be appreciated. It's fine if you don't. Something I genuinely do want to hear, though, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on Dread Talons. Are there any, like, combos or strategies that, like, you've been cooking up? For sure, if I miss any combos, I would very much like to hear them so I can use them in the future. I literally read every single comment, so if you guys ever have a random question, whether it's about 40k or chaos or any of that sort of stuff, I will always answer it to the best of my ability. You guys are generally like the nicest community on the internet, which is wild to say because nice communities, internet, don't always go hand in hand, but genuinely, like, one of my favorite parts of doing these videos is getting to interact with you guys. So by all means, reach out with any questions, any suggestions, any of that sort of stuff that you guys got. I would love to hear it. Don't be afraid to reach out. So, Night Lords, are they a meme or are they the real deal? Well, the honest answer, if you want to be upfront with you, is nobody knows yet. The codex, like, technically isn't even out yet, so anybody says they know for sure are just, like, pulling your leg. But like I sort of said, I think they're way better than at first glance. If you were like me and like a lot of people were, as soon as you saw their detachment rules, you're like, oh, this is the fluffy one. This is the fun one you bring to casual matches. Well, again, after thinking it through a little more, and honestly, what got the gears turning was seeing some other people's opinions. I had a few people bring up that they thought they were way better, and after looking into it more, I'm starting to agree with you. I don't think they're like in the least, but I don't think they're the best. Like Renegades, Raiders, come on, man. Like, hard to top that. But I do think they're going to be winning tournaments every now and then. Mark my words, Goonhammer's going to have one of their competitive innovation articles, and sooner than you think, they're going to have Night Lords listed as #1. I guarantee you're going to see them. Something else that I think is cool about them is they're like the general's army. If you like sneaky little tricks, little like combos, that sort of stuff, I think these guys probably have the most of any of the CSM detachments, especially when you start sneaking in Daemonic Allies, which I will go over at the end of this as well. Yeah, man, I think that, yeah, a lot of clever little tricks in there. Also, I know for a fact, some of the most die-hard CSM players, the ones who like play a particular legion, like the most hardcore ones are all Night Lord players. I swear, like the vast majority of people who play a certain legion that I've met over like the decades or whatever, I swear, almost all of them were like Night Lord players. You guys are nuts. But you best believe there are a bunch. There's dozens of us, dozens, I swear. You best believe there's people out there racking their brains over how to make this army work. So like, I am so excited to see what people come up with in the future as time goes on. These guys are going to be like, yeah, man, they're going to be sneaky good. Sneaky good. Something else that I think is really fun with them and does make them fun for like casual stuff, they're gonna be chaotic as hell, man. Not only for your opponent, but also for yourself. You are never gonna know what's gonna happen next turn or on that turn. I hope you're pretty agile, because for sure you're gonna be like targeting down a particular unit, trying to make him fail. He doesn't, but oh, the squad next to him does. So hopefully you're agile. You can, about face and target down that other guy. I think that does make for really fun gameplay for both of you guys. It'll be really fun. Also, it's going to be scary for your opponent. I'm like, sincerely, I'm going to be kind of scared when I fight Night Lord players. Maybe you got like an elite army, like Custodians or something. Normally you just leave a cheap chaff unit behind to hold down your objective. Well, now you really got to consider that, man. And truthfully, I don't think that's that smart a play when you're fighting Night Lords. Out of the blue, they can force you to take Battleshocks at like -2, -3, something wild like that. And all of a sudden, you're losing out on primary. You might even lose out on an entire turn worth of primary. Now, before we get too far into all this, we should probably address the elephant in the room. So we'll go over the Detachment Rule in a minute. I'm sure most people know it already, but basically it revolves around like leadership and Battleshock and that sort of stuff. But elephant in the room, so Battleshock. Why does everybody see it as a meme? Why does everybody talk down about it? Why hasn't it been good since like, I think 5th edition was the last time I remember it being like okay. So there's a few reasons, and most of them should be obvious if you play a lot of 40k. The big one's going to be variance. You can't guarantee at all that a Battleshock's going to go off. Variance is like your worst enemy as a competitive player, so that's going to be a huge deal. Also, too, a lot of armies, like I pretty much consider the baseline leadership for almost every faction to be like 6. 6 leadership is like the norm. Sometimes you have 7. Extremely rarely is it worse than that unless it's like a Garbo unit. And even if you do have lower leadership, like maybe your faction as a whole has like pretty mediocre, well, for key units at least, you just attach a character to it, and in that case, almost always does it go to 6, sometimes it's going to go 5, and that's a real stinker. Just ask Tyranid players like how much that can suck. Now, all that said, why do I think Dread Talons might actually be able to like take advantage of it and actually make it like meaningful for a change? Well, there's a few reasons. You got the obvious one in that, you know, they can affect it. They can debuff your leadership. Going -2 is going to be like easy peasy for these guys. But more than this, it's going to be the number of times they force it. I was thinking earlier, like, somebody should keep a tally of how many Battleshock tests their opponent's going to take over a game, and I bet you it's going to be like over 50. Sometimes it's going to be like way more than that. Every single turn, it's going to get wild. They can focus it on a specific unit if they need to. More than that, they don't even have to do that. It's just going to naturally come. Yeah, I was thinking earlier, even if you don't focus on the leadership shenanigans at all, so you just play a normal game, come turn 3 for sure, by turn like 4 and beyond and all that, your entire army, your opponent's entire army is going to be taking Battleshocks left, right, and center. And, you know, the odds say somebody's going to fail leadership at some point. So I do think they actually make it like, yeah, it's like actually meaningful with these guys. For how much you can force it and how debuffed it can be, you can almost guarantee it on a particular unit. Even one that has like, they can even have like 4 leadership. You force them to roll enough, like, yeah, they're going to fail it eventually. I think that is a big deal. I think a lot of people are going to realize that, like, damn, dude, like, Battleshock actually does affect the game. You can literally win a game off a single failed Battleshock. Again, if they're on a primary objective and they fail that, that is a huge, huge, huge deal. More than that, maybe they have a defensive stratagem, so like armor contempt's gonna be a huge one. Nope, you're not using that anymore. I'm gonna, you know, take a full advantage. And by the way, I'm gonna reroll all my hits and wounds. Well, you can't get any defensive stuff. There's a lot of huge deals that come that are related to failing that Battleshock. The last thing, I think of all the like super factions, so like not just CSM, but Chaos as a whole, Chaos can take the most advantage of it, mainly from our allies. Like, you can bring in some really spicy allies, which also make the list like more fun, and improve them in some ways. We'll see at the end when I load some of those lists. Like, I think they improve them as well. Yeah, of all the armies, Chaos can take the most advantage of it, so I think Night Lords are sitting a lot prettier than a lot of us were thinking. So, without further ado, detachment rules. They got Terror Descends Aura. In the Battleshock step of your opponent's command phase, if an enemy unit is below its starting strength and within 12 inches of one of your units, they must take a Battleshock test. So that alone is huge. With how much like Deep Strike, even 3-inch Deep Strike, even just regular strategic reserves, a 12-inch bubble, that's actually like pretty damn huge. You could totally force their entire army to do it turn 2 with a sneakily deep struck like Raptor squad. Yeah, I think that has a lot of value just on its own. And again, you're able to flip objectives. Your opponent, they're going to be scared, man. I'm going to be scared when I'm fighting you, because I'm not going to be positive that I can hold down my rear objective, especially if I do what I normally do and just leave a crap cultist squad there. They have terrible leadership, and I don't want to attach a character to a cheap squad. Like, yeah, man, it's going to get pretty nasty right there alone. The second part keys directly off that. Basically, anytime an enemy unit within 12 inches has to take a leadership test, Battleshock test, they must subtract 1 from the result. That's pretty obvious right there. They fail more of it, and they do it way more often. So, those two combined, at first glance, it seems terrible. When you focus your list on it, when like that's your strategy, that suddenly becomes a pretty damn big deal. I think too, so it's going to affect the playstyle for this squad. I think like plinking off wounds, spreading damage is going to be a pretty big deal, because you want to get as many units as humanly possible below their starting strength. For vehicles, it's deceptively easy. You literally plink a single wound off of them, bada bing, bada boom. They're taking leadership the rest of the game. Hope you don't fail it. For squads, it depends on the squad, but some of them will be easy peasy. If it's cultists, like, yeah, man, shoot a flamer at them, they'll probably die, but, you know, if they survive, yep, you're taking a leadership with your terrible leadership value. It really adds up in those ways. Don't forget, you got tank shock. Grenade stratagems is going to be a huge one for these guys. Like, definitely remember your grenades. You can shoot one squad, grenade another. Like, yeah, there's ways to plink off those wounds, so I do think something to bear in mind. You're going to want to spread the love when it comes to that damage. So for enhancements, they have one incredibly good one, and then the others are pretty decent. So first one, Knight's Shroud. Chaos Lord model only, excluding Terminator, seems to be the jump or the foot version. Models in the Bearer's unit have the stealth ability. So this is actually a pretty decent one. -1 to hit is like really strong, honestly. With Chaos Daemon, sometimes I bring the footprints and he gives a bubble of stealth. Dark Shroud's a really common sight if you're fighting Dark Angels. Yeah, man, it's actually incredibly strong. I think it might be decent. If you have points left over at the end, I think it's worth. And probably what I do is probably throw it on a big fat Raptor squad, probably a 10-man with a Jump Lord attached to it. I think that's totally valid. Gives them a pretty damn good survivability boost versus certain armies, Astra Militarum, Orcs, like that sort of stuff. When they're trying to shoot you, like it's actually a pretty big deal. Going from 4s to 5s, or better yet, 5s to 6s. And at that point, it becomes like a giant deal. That's literally half. If they go to 5 to 6, you're getting hit half as often as usual. So pretty good enhancement. Not an auto include like even in the least bit, but still pretty powerful. The second one, Will Breaker. So, Heretic Astartes model only, so it can go on anyone. In the fight phase, after the bearer has made its attacks, select one enemy unit hit by one or more, and they must take a battle shock. So the wording sucks, or the timing, I should say, sucks. It only goes off after you make your attacks. So, you know, where that's a stinker is the big beat stick character you got, he doesn't get to take advantage of it. However, if you have multiple squads in there, then the others would. Unfortunately, that's one I'm probably going to have to pass on. Again, if you have the points left over, like, maybe you consider it. It does play into your detachment ability, but I don't like the wording. I wish it was after a charge. So once he makes a charge, choose one unit. That way, again, a lot of value there, but as is, probably one you skip, to be honest. Alright, the next one, though, Warp-Fueled Thrusters. So this is like the most powerful one here. One of the most powerful in the entire book. Jump Pack Lord only. At the end of your opponent's turn, if the bearer's unit is not within engagement range of one or more enemy units, you can remove it from the battlefield and put it into strategic reserves. This is huge for multiple reasons. You got the obvious one, you got a super uppy-downy, super mobile unit, so, pretty obvious right there. The second one, so if you didn't already know, so long as a unit starts on the battlefield, starts the game on the battlefield, if it goes into reserves, it is still allowed to come down turn 1. Beyond that, I'm pretty positive it can stay in reserves beyond turn 3 as well. Normally, you have to go down by turn 3. These guys can stay until turn 5 if they need to. Where that becomes big is if you go second, and then, you wouldn't do it first turn, but maybe turn 4, you pick them up, and then turn 5, you can put them literally wherever you need them. You got a 3-inch deep strike as well that also plays into that, so that's pretty huge. You can also, I kind of hinted at, you got a turn 1 deep strike. So long as you go second, at the end of your opponent's turn, you pick them up, and then bada bing, bada boom, I'm going to put them down behind you. I doubt you do that turn 1, but maybe you do. Depends where they move to, And suddenly, that's a big distraction. Again, Custodians or certain armies, they're going to hate turning around. World Leaders are going to hate having to turn around and deal with those guys. I think this is an auto-include, like pretty much you start every single list with that. You can even put on just a solo Jump Lord, just a guy all on his lonesome. He can make use of that, scoring secondaries, hiding behind, obscuring, all that sort of stuff. Again, I think that's an auto-include. The final one, Eater of Dread, which is a cool name, by the way. Heretic Astartes model only, so can go on anyone. At the start of your command phase, if the bearer is on the battlefield, roll a d6, adding 1 to the result for each battle-shocked enemy that is also on the battlefield. On a 5-up, you gain 1 CP. I think that is actually really powerful for these guys. It's not guaranteed every turn, but after like turn 2 and 3 and beyond, like getting buffed to that to where you're getting on a 3-up, sometimes even a 2-up, that's not going to be that hard at all. And for how CP starved CSM as a whole are, and including these guys, for how command point starved they are, I think that's actually a giant deal. I think that's one that I would like strongly consider every single list. I believe it's only 15 points as well, so yeah, I think that one actually has a lot more value than it might seem at first glance. Alright, for stratagems, first up we got Depthless Cruelty. So before I get into these too much, a lot of these are battle tactics, especially the good ones, and do remember that the Jump Lord gives you a free battle tactic, and you can use it even if somebody else has, so that's like a really big deal. Do not forget that whatsoever. You're going to be using that literally every single turn, if you can. So again, Deathless Cruelty. In the fight phase, one Heretic Astartes infantry unit that has not been selected to fight yet. Until the end of your turn, each time you target a unit that has been battle shocked and or is below half strength, improve your armor pin by 1. So it sucks that you can't guarantee it. Like, that does suck, because other detachments, like Renegades, they just get it like on its own. They don't have to jump through any hoops. That said, again, you're going to be causing quite a few, like probably way more battle shocks than you like might anticipate at first. You're going to be causing those quite often. When you get it off on a key unit, that's a pretty goddamn big deal. Again, this is a battle tactic as well, so you can use it twice if needed. That's one you're going to use every single time that you're able to. +1 AP, especially for CSM. They have pretty middling AP as a whole. Being able to get the +1 on that becomes big. Raptors, for example, well, okay, it's fight phase only. I was going to say they get AP 5 Meltas, but forget I said that. They'll have AP 3, like Power Fist and that sort of stuff. Still a whole lot of use there. Next up, you got Relentless Tear. So in your movement phase, just after a Heretic Astartes unit from your army falls back, they can advance and charge. So that has quite a bit of utility, especially when a lot of your infantry are going to be jump pack. So you can just jump over the screen. And in fact, yeah, this is actually like deceptively like really good, really utilitarian as well. Yeah, screens, they're not going to mean as much to you because again, you're just going to jump over them, go after that meaty target. Better yet, get like your 12-inch bubble of causing battle shocks in the middle of their army. There's a lot of stuff that comes off of that. It's deceptively strong and again, really utilitarian. Never ever forget you got that one. Next up, we got Bloody Example. So in the fight phase, just after a Heretic Astartes unit from your army destroys a character unit, each enemy unit within 12 inches invisible to you must take a battle shock test. So this one isn't as good as the others, at least at first glance. Doesn't seem as flashy. There will be times when it's pretty strong, though. I think it's going to be especially strong if you manage to kill a character in your opponent's turn. That way, you get to take advantage of them being battle shocked for your entire turn. On your turn, it won't be as strong because fight phase ends and then boom, it's their turn. Bada bing, bada boom, they're no longer battle shocked. So there are some issues in that regard. But again, I think on your turn, it'll actually have some value. Also, too, there will be times where like you're fighting over an objective, even on your turn. People don't score objectives or like take control of it, I should say, until the end of the phase. So maybe they do, like, they out-objective control you, but you manage, like, kill a character off to the side, 12 inches away, 11.9 inches away, you manage to kill a character. They fail that battle shock, all of a sudden, they still don't have control of it. So there will be times where, like, that comes up. It's a pretty sneaky one. It does take some hoops to jump through. You got to kill a character. So, you know, not something you rely on every single turn, but when it comes up, it can be very powerful. Speaking of very powerful, Screaming Descent. So this is one of my favorite ones. So in the reinforcement steps from the of your turn, from the second battle round forwards, you can choose one jump pack infantry from your army. You can set it up anywhere that is 3 inches horizontally away from enemy units, and you cannot charge. That is going to be gigantic. There are multiple ways where that's big. One little combo I'm thinking of that I think will be pretty con. You can just do a cheap little Raptor squad. Currently they're what, 85 points? Something like that. They're really damn cheap for how good they are. You just throw one away. You just throw it in the middle of your opponent's army, spread it out as much as you can so that you can affect almost their entire army, especially if they're bunched up. And yeah, force the -2 leadership, and if they're below starting strength, all that sort of stuff. So you got that. Move blocking is giant. Again, you can throw away a squad of Raptors. They're cheap. It's not that big a deal if you lose them. You can block a really important charge, so maybe you're fighting world leaders or something. That's a big deal. And then you got the best part of it, stealing objectives. Maybe they got a cultist squad sitting on their home objective, you went second, it's turn 5, whatever the reason is, you can drop a big fat squad of Raptor, a tin man with Harkin attached to it or something. You can't charge them, but you can shoot the hell out of them. I was actually thinking, so this might be blasphemy, because almost always you're going to see Meltas on Raptors, but maybe Flamers would be a valid choice as well, for clearing out chaff, for clearing out the rear home objective holders, or even primary holders. A lot of times it's going to be, yeah, chaffy units. Also, Orcs going to be an issue. Granted, strength 4 versus T5 is questionable there, but either way, I think stealing objectives is by far going to be the most valuable part of that rule. 3-inch deep strikes win games. If you've ever fought Grey Knights or Demons, that sort of stuff, like, yeah, you know how big a deal it is. It's going to force it, if your opponent, like, knows how to play against it, it's going to force them to screen, like, especially well, too. So, I really, really, really like that stratagem. I think it's a big one. The next big one, Pitiless Hunters. So this is a battle tactic that's pretty important. In your shooting phase, unfortunately only a shooting phase, but beggars can be choosers, 1 Heretic Astartes infantry from your army that has not been selected to shoot until the end of the phase. Each time you target a unit that is battle shocked and or below half strength, you can reroll the hit roll and the wound roll. That is one of the more powerful ones in the book. Sucks that you have to jump through the battle shock hoop, but again, it's going to come up more often than you might anticipate. It does suck too, only shooting phase and only infantry, so there are some pretty heavy restrictions there. I think this stratagem is going to make Havocs. Havocs are going to have a bit more value to them, I do believe. Obliterators as well. Obliterators stinks that they can only come in pairs. Man, I wish they could still come in 4. Can you imagine rerolling hits and wounds with 4 Obliterators? Like, maybe this stratagem's like the reason you can't. But regardless, I think Havocs, Obliterators will get some use. Even Raptors. And what's great about Raptors is they'll often, almost always, most likely, have the Jump Lord attached to them. So you get to do it twice, and it's free for one of them. Pretty goddamn big deal there. Again, I think this one you will literally use every single turn if you're able to. Even if, like, your prime target didn't fail their battle shock, but somebody else did, yeah, man, I'm gonna take advantage of it. Speaking of the Havocs, I've been teching them into a lot more in my list, and I've been doing, well, normally when I do it, I bring 2 of them, 1 last cannons, but then I bring the chain cannons. When you consider they got the sustained hits, and then you give them reroll hits and wounds, with their, 32 shots, into orcs, for example, it's fantastic. That's like a little orc horde, like, clearer right there. It's actually a pretty big deal. Even into big targets, you can give them lethal hits. Like, you'd be surprised how much work they do. I'm actually really, like, happy with how the Havocs are. Sucks that it's hard to give them +1 AP. Now, do remember, if somebody fails their battle shock, it'll be expensive. You got to spend 2 command points at that point, but you get +1 AP and reroll all hits and wounds. Like, hot diggity dog, man. That gets pretty dangerous right there. Again, really powerful stratagem. I love that's a battle tactic. That's like one of the best parts of it. Last up, you got Merciless Pursuit. So this is the gotcha. If your opponent, like, doesn't remember, because you always tell your opponent before the game starts, you know, all your little gotchas and stuff, but this will snag up some people, and it's going to make them afraid to fall back for good reason. So, end of your opponent's movement phase, you can choose 1 Heretic Astartes infantry that is not within engagement range. Select 1 enemy unit that fell back this turn is within 6 inches of your unit. You can declare charge as though it's your charge phase. Note, you don't get the charge bonus. So, Warp Talons are absolutely going to love this. Even Raptors are going to love it. Even just Lord's going to kind of like it. But yeah, Warp Talons can make a lot of use out of this. Maybe you already charged somebody. You wanted to uppy downy, but you couldn't because I had some people left over. Your opponent wants to shoot your Warp Talons for very good reason, tries to fall back. Nope, I don't think so. So that is actually a really strong stratagem right there. When people get locked up with you, if they don't have more than 6-inch movement, in fact, they need more than 7-inch movement at that point, they're basically like permanently locked up. Works great for screening as well, or screening, move blocking, I should say. If you move somebody, move block them by charging in, like, they're gonna have a hell of a time getting away. So overall, aside from the hoop you gotta jump through, the battle shock part, those are actually almost all are really strong stratagems, and one that, like, you need to try to memorize and remember to use every single turn. It's pretty clear. The +1 AP and the reroll hits and wounds, those are incredibly strong. Screaming Descent, getting a 3-inch deep strike, that is gigantic. That is such a big deal. I am very happy with their stratagems. Again, it sucks that they got jumped through hoops, but like I've said plenty of times, it's going to happen way more often than you think. And versus certain armies that genuinely do have, like, terrible leadership, like, it's going to come up a lot more often than you might think. Alright, next up, so we got units. So, for the units, I'm going to try to focus on ones that mainly key off their abilities, obviously. Luckily, they have a lot of good ones to choose from. One thing you probably and hopefully noticed from their stratagems, they pretty much all key off of, like, infantry. So I do think they're going to be a pretty infantry-heavy army, surprise, surprise. But again, they have really good ones to choose from, especially. Also, as a Night Lord's attachment, so obviously you're going to want, like, jump pack infantry. So, pretty much the standard, I think, is to be a shitload of Raptors and a shitload of Warp Talons, especially Warp Talons. By the way, like, Warp Talons are one of the best units in the entire game, currently as written. Expect to see them everywhere. Pretty much every CSM list I've been writing has 3 of them. I'll mention, I have a section on them in a minute, but I had really good results with them just last night. So, yeah, it's pretty wild. So, first up, do I have a model for it? I'm not sure I have a model, so we'll just do this guy. Jump Pack Lord. Jump Pack Lords are, ooh, I'm so happy that they're back, man. I, like many people, was incredibly sad when they disappeared in the 9th, I believe it was 9th edition they went away, maybe it was the 10th edition, but either way, so sad when they got legended. It was lame. I have a bunch of them, like many CSM players. I have like 3 of them at least on my shelf. I get to dust them off and bring them back out. I don't even need to buy the new model, I just get to run my old one, so I'm pretty happy about that. Regardless, so he's basically, when it comes to like damage output and that sort of stuff, he doesn't have the ability for it, but he's sort of a beat stick like a regular Chaos Lord. Doesn't have the +1 damage thing, which would be great. That said, he makes up for it. So first of all, you get the standard ability of a free battle tactic, and you can use it even if somebody else did. That is low-key a huge deal. That is always strong wherever it shows up. It was way stronger before they restricted it to just battle tactics, but regardless, like I mentioned earlier, Night Lords have really good battle tactics to choose from, so that's something you use all the time. His second ability is also very strong. Being able to pile in and consolidate 6 inches on a jump pack unit, nonetheless, that is gigantic. You're gonna wipe out a squad and then jump on the objective, or tie up another unit, etc., etc. I love 6-inch consolidates, because otherwise it's really 3 inches. It's really hard, man. That was one of my big complaints, and I still like kind of don't like it with 10th edition, how restrictive the melee phase like movement is as a whole. That said, this fixes up quite nicely. Again, you got jump packs, so you don't have to worry about being screened out or anything like that. I think, yeah, pretty big deal. Next up, we got another new one, the Firebrand. This guy is going to be surprisingly good, points pending. It all depends on his points. I and a lot of people are hoping that he's pointed like appropriately, so like 40 points maybe, something around that. Like, he needs to be really cheap, otherwise he's, you know, he's garbage. That said, he has very good abilities, so he can force a Battleshock on an infantry just by hitting him with his auto-hit flamer. That is going to be giant. He's also, his other, it's like not written on the data sheet, but his ability to freaking be a cheap little chap unit. So I do think he's going to be fine just on his lonesome. And in fact, you'll see in a minute that, yeah, he does not always need to be attached to something. He will be perfectly fine just on his own, and that's probably how I'm going to run him a lot of times. 3 of them for 120 points. Boom, I need to screen a corner. Cool, no problem. Ooh, I need to hide in the center of the board behind obscuring and Battleshock somebody, or, you know, have them come out and Battleshock somebody when it's important. I think those are all great. His damage output and his stat line is like so-so, like at best. His stat line's surprisingly good. T4 is like kind of wild on a cultist frame, so I do enjoy that. Pray to the dark gods with me that he gets pointed appropriately, and yes, you're going to start seeing this guy all the time. Obviously, he especially meshes well with Dread Talons, so I do think you'll see this guy a lot. Luckily, I already own 2 of the models because I bought the kits before, so yeah, I'm sitting pretty with that. Next up, so alright, jury's kind of out on this guy, but we got the Demon Prince, the Winged Demon Prince at that. So he's got ability, if you move over somebody in the movement phase, you force a Battleshock on him. Again, that keys directly off what we're trying to do. You're going to have multiple ways of forcing those Battleshocks. Also, what I think is really powerful for him is, there's 2 parts. First of all, yeah, most likely you're going to mark him Corn every time. That's what I personally would do. Mark him Corn. Suddenly you're getting the Strength 10 melee output. You're mostly going to be infantry. Most of your army is going to be infantry, so you're not going to have that many heavy hitters. This guy helps shore that up a bit. His second bit is he can cause mortal wounds just by charging. Any unit he charges, you roll a number of dice for how many wounds he has left, and each 4-up is a mortal wound. So on average, assuming he's full health, you do 5 mortal wounds. Again, that keys off of your ability. The forcing Battleshocks in your opponent's command phase. All of a sudden, this guy is like beautiful at that. Now, we do need to see the points. I'm going to assume they stays the same at 165. That would be my assumption, honestly. Hopefully, he goes a little lower. That would be fantastic, because sadly, Demon Princes are sort of a rare sight in 10th edition. But yeah, this guy, I think he does have some play in Night Lords. Definitely, like, at least consider him. Take a look at him if you need a big hitter for your list. Next up, we got the one that you guys knew was coming, Raptors. So Raptors are the perfect unit for Night Lords. They're great, period. I ran them all the time in the Index and like got lots of use of them. I love Raptors. They're one of my favorite infantry in the book. While in Night Lords, they are my favorite infantry in the book, if I'm running Dread Talons at least. It's twofold. So you got the -1 leadership on anybody within 6 inches, and it's more than that. It's -1 Battleshock and leadership test. A lot of these abilities, like the vast majority, only affect Battleshock, and all the time I get mixed up because I'm like, oh, nope, you got -1. They're like, no, this isn't a Battleshock, it's just leadership. Well, these guys do cost the -1 on that. On top of it, they force a Battleshock test, so after you make a charge, units that are in engagement range are forced to take a Battleshock test. If you get a big fat squad of these guys, 10 of them, which won't be rare at all for Dread Talons, you can cause multiple tests. So, like, maybe get lucky and you charge like 3 different units. Well, have fun rolling those tests and hope you don't fail, because if you do, it's really gonna hurt. Next up, and arguably better, okay, Raptors are probably like the best unit for Dread Talons, but next up, one of the best in the entire book, one of the best in the entire game, it's going to be Warp Talons. These guys got like the biggest buff you could possibly ask for. Essentially, they get to uppy downy. So, at the end of the fight phase, if they had been eligible to fight at any point during that phase, but they're no longer in engagement range, they can uppy downy. Where this is especially strong is you pick them up in your turn, and then on your opponent's turn, you can rapid ingress them down, and then you get to move your 12 inches and charge something else. Like, it's like insane. I ran them the other night, and I had such good results with them. It was wild. I ran 3 of them, and basically you pick out little squads that you know you can finish off, especially if you combine them together. So sometimes I'd have both squads charge into a single, well, I forget who was I fighting. I think it was Astra Military, but either way, you charge into a little squad, you wipe them, just pick them both, put both up. And then again, you can rapid ingress them, one of them, and then the other one, maybe you need to, you know, investigate signals, whatever the reason, you bring them down on the other side. These guys are huge. On top of that, they have a fantastic stat line. Strength 5, minus 2 AP, reroll all wounds. That is, on its own, that is already giant. Now, it will make the stratagem for reroll all hits and wounds. You'll lose a little bit of it if you use it on these guys, and truthfully, you probably won't need to a lot of times. They're going to be, like, fine just on their own. It sucks you can't attach a character to them, but it's probably good, because then they'd be, like, super busted. I have already heard, like, people complaining about them, and that's a good sign. That means that, yeah, you definitely want to include these guys in your list. I think any and, like, almost every single CSM army out there is going to want at least a squad of these, probably even 3. I'm actually kind of bummed, because now I need to go out and buy another, like, 6 boxes of Raptors. It's gonna be crazy. Speaking of like serious advice here, if you want to run these guys, I suggest you go out and buy a box, like at least one, like real quick. They're probably gonna be sold out here if they aren't already. I haven't looked. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised they're already sold out. Warp Talons are legit. Be sure to do what I did, magnetize them. They're really not that hard to magnetize, guys. That way you can run them as either or. Also, their models are sexy as hell. Yeah, dude, Warp Talons, every way, shape, and form. These guys are fantastic. Lastly, we got Havocs. So, like I mentioned earlier, their stratagems revolve around infantry, so I do think Havocs gain a little bit of strength here. I should have included them. I didn't, but I should. Consider Obliterators, too. Obliterators are right next. We need to see the points on Obliterators before we say for sure. Havocs are probably going to stay at their same points, 120, which is like a steal. I mentioned it earlier in the stratagems. When I've been running them, a lot of times I bring 2 squads. One with the las cannon, so that gives you your anti-tank. That's fantastic. Never forget you got sustained hits. It's going to be huge. The other with chain cannons, especially with the Orc Menace that's here. Most people are doing Bully Boys at the moment, but I think it's going to switch over to the Green Tide. A lot of people already are bringing it. Like, it's no secret that Green Tide are incredibly strong. Havocs are going to be great. When you can force a Battleshock on a unit and get to reroll all those hits and wounds, you get lethals or sustained, bada bing, bada boom, man. They get really, really, really powerful at that point. They can fit inside transports, so you can put them inside Land Raiders or Rhinos. What's great when you put them in Rhinos is you got the firing ports, so suddenly you got a Rhino that's putting out 2 freaking las cannons each turn. Like, for 75 points, that's not terrible at all. Even with the chain cannons, that's fine. Chain cannons with the Havoc launcher and the combi bolter on top, like, yeah, dude, he's a little infantry, like, mulcher. Havocs, I think, if you're looking for your anti-tank, anti-blob, anti-whatever, yeah, definitely take a look at Havocs. Like I said, Obliterators, if they get pointed fairly, because 180s, that's pretty questionable, man. For 2 of them, for, you know, you look at their, ooh, they have a really strong Melta. It's D3 shots each. 2 D3 shots, you might get 2 shots from your currently 180-point squad. Hell no, dude. Hell no. So do be wary of them. But if they're pointed appropriately, 140, something like that, then they'll see a resurgence as well. So these are just some of the key units. For allies, boy, oh boy, do we got some choices, though. So I think this is where Dread Talons are going to be, like, especially good. Or they're a detachment can make especially good use of allies. Every CSM army can. Nurglings, I mean, come on, Nurglings, like, belong in almost every list. Like, almost every list I write has freaking Nurglings in it. But Dread Talons, unlike the rest, can make use of more than just the Nurglings. So first of all, I didn't put the model here, but you got blue whores. Blue whores are man, they're surprisingly good. Normally you wouldn't bring them as an ally, because again, you got Nurglings. These guys are 120 points, so kind of spendy, but they give you some unique abilities. First of all, you got Infiltrators. That's huge. Infiltrators is giant for an army that otherwise doesn't have access to it. That's pretty big right there, but then they key directly off of your army ability. So Cackling Whores, while any enemy unit, not just infantry of the sort, is within 6 inches, they subtract 1 from their leadership characteristic. So that alone is fantastic. Again, plays directly in. With you infiltrating as well, it's not going to be that hard to get within 6 inches of them. They also split, so they're hard to get rid of. And they also have a 4-up invul. That is nuts for what should be a chaff unit. Yeah, blue whores, I think they'll be a fairly common sight in Dread Talons. Don't forget that you have to bring a battle line to bring the other units. You have to bring a battle line first. So these guys do gain some value there, especially because some of the best characters you can bring are going to be the Tzeentch ones, at least when it comes to the leadership shenanigans. These guys give you access to that as well. I really like the blue whores. Next up, we have Changecaster. So Changecaster, this guy, he's only 60 points. You can attach him to the blue whores if you want to. It's not only the pink whores. This guy, again, plays directly off. What he has, so in your shooting phase, after you shot, you choose an infantry unit hit by 1 or more, and they must take a Battleshock. He has an 18-inch range, so you can basically reach out and bad touch people with this guy, again, for only 60 points. Also, too, even though you can attach him to the blue whores, he doesn't have to be ran that way. He can go on his lonesome. T3, 3 wounds, 4 pinballs, so it is be really careful if you do it that way. But totally, you can hide him behind obscuring. When you need to force a battle shock on something important, just pop him out and do it. I really like Changecaster. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if you see this guy with a lot of Dread Talons. Lastly, we got probably the best one of the best allies you can bring for this detachment, the Changeling. Not only is he just fun and awesome, every time I've ran the Changeling, so many good experiences come from playing with this guy for both you and your opponent. Kind of sucks for your opponent, but if they're in a good mood and a good person, oh yeah, man, some hilarious times ensue with this guy. So first of all, you got Formless Whore. Each time an enemy unit wishes, so if they just think about it, to select this model as a target of attack, whether shooting or melee, they must first take a Battleshock test. If it fails, in addition to being Battleshocked, they just cannot target this guy at all. Guys, you key that off. Maybe you got I don't know, somehow you got a Poxbringer, but more likely you got Raptors there. You got Raptors nearby, they're going to be a -2 to the test. They're not even going to want to target this guy. He might potentially just be able to sit on the center objective, and people are going to be like, yeah, I'm not going to target that guy, because if I do, you're just going to reroll all your hits and wounds versus me. Incredibly strong right there. I should mention, too, he has a Lone Operative and Stealth, so obviously those alone are strong as well. He's only 90 points, so fairly cheap. His second ability, Mischief and Confusion. At the start of your opponent's shooting phase, select an enemy unit within 12 inches invisible, and they roll a die. On a 2 to 5, they subtract 1 from their hit roll. On a 6, they are not eligible to shoot. Now, the 6... gonna be incredibly rare, don't bank on that at all. Granted, when that happens, it could be a gigantic deal. But the 2 to 5, given -1 to hit, that buffs the rest of your army. Getting -1 to hit on, a Hellbrute or your Land Raider, something like that, those are low-key, giant deals. Again, I think Changeling, I think he might be one of the more powerful allies that you can bring in. Very strong, very fun as well. So definitely definitely at least consider that guy for your list. Next up, so we got Nurgle. First up, we got Poxbringer. So Poxbringer, again, plays off of your Detachment Rule. Are you guys seeing a theme here? So Feculent Despair. While an enemy unit is within 6 inches, each time they take a Battleshock, they must subtract 1. So you get this guy and a squad of Raptors nearby, combined with your Detachment Rule, suddenly they're -3. Even Custodians are going to be failing leadership when it comes to that. For only 55 points, not bad at all. Now, again, you do have to bring Battle Line, but that's one of the perks of Nurgle, is that they can bring Nurglings, so 40 points each. This guy's 55, so for 95 points, which is a steal if you ask me, you can add even more debuffs to your opponent's army. Poxbringer, definitely worth considering. Lastly, we got Sloppity Bilepiper. So this guy has like the best name and one of the better models. I freaking love this guy's model, doing the the gut bagpipe. Who couldn't love that man? Anyways, he has Disease of Mirth. So at the start of the fight phase, every enemy unit, aside from monsters and vehicles, within 6 inches must take a Battleshock test. Yet again, man, we're forcing even more Battleshocks. Giant deal right there. Fight phase, like it's a little late, but at least it's at the start of the fight phase. So again, if it's your turn, they're not going to be able to use defensive stratagems should they fail it. And then on the opposite end, they're not going to be able to use offensive stratagems, potentially. Very, very, very powerful. This guy, too, I believe he's 55. He might be 60. But either way, he's cheap. Again, you combo that with Nurglings, you can get really good allies for 200 points, guys. Yeah, Nurgle, I think, is also exceptionally good with the Dread Talons as well. Finally, we got a few notable mentions. So if you bring Khorne, and this might be a fairly common one, at least for testing. I think while people are still feeling out the list, I know I'm going to try it. Why wouldn't I? You got the Skull Cannon. Now, the issue with Khorne, and why he's like a notable mention, is you have to bring the battle line. So you got to bring Bloodletters, which are 120 points. Bloodletters are okay. They're good when they're buffed up, but on their lonesome, they're really not that strong. But regardless, this guy gives you a 48-inch cannon that can force battle shocks. So, Skulls of the Fallen, in your shooting phase, after this model is shot, select one enemy unit of any kind, not just infantry, that was hit by one or more, and then you must take a battle shock. So, unfortunately, it's only AP 1, Strength 9 is okay, 2 damage is okay, but with how prolific like cover is, I essentially treat it as AP 0, so he's really not going to be doing damage. I really wouldn't look at him for damage, but causing that battle shock from 48 inches away, like, pretty spicy, man. I do like that. Again, I think some experimenting needs to go on which of these Chaos Gods are best. I would think, I really do like Tzeentch, but considering how cheap the Nurglings are, I do think Nurgle is just as valid, if not more valid. I'd be curious what your guys' opinions are, and in fact, are you guys, like, even going to bring allies? I do think this is an army where you want to, like, strongly consider bringing those allies in, because, again, it just boosts the rest of your army. I do think it's, like, this is an army where, yeah, I think more often than not, you do want to sneak some in there. So, again, this faction, or this detachment as a whole, very fun, man. You got so many combos you can sneak in there. I am ultra excited to get them on the table, ultra excited to see how they do, ultra excited to, like, watch somebody fail multiple, like, fail. It'll happen, you know, you play enough games, it'll happen at some point. Somebody, like, almost their entire army is going to be battle shocked at some point, and it's going to be hilarious. They're both going to have a good chuckle, and then hopefully you should win the game at that point. Alright, finally, so I want to show you guys a few lists that I put together, just examples. Now, I do need to put a gigantic disclaimer, big flashing light disclaimer here. These are not at all optimized yet. These are just like my initial like thoughts on them. They're relatively similar too. I didn't do too much variety in them, but again, the hope and like the point of it is it gets the gears turning in your head on some like ideas you can try on your end. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts, not only on these lists, but I'd be more interested in seeing what lists you guys have put together. Not only for me, but other commenters can see them themselves and maybe get some ideas for their list. I would love to see your guys' list as well. Again, gives everybody some ideas on potential builds and like themes they can use. Alright, so for list number 1, take a look here. So this is a pure CSM list. So this did not bring allies, and it's kind of trying to be like fluffy, kind of trying to fit the theme. Let me delete some of these just so they're not too distracting. Alright, so we got, I'll post the lists in the description below in case you guys would like to see them. This is using the Munitorum Field Manual points, and I also assume that Firebrands are going to be 40 points as well. I think that's a fair price for them. So we got 3 Cultist Firebrands, one of them attached to the Cultist. We got 3 of the Jump Lords, 2 to the 5-mans and 1 to a 10-man. This guy I would probably give the uppy-downy enhancement, so yeah, they can uppy-downy each and every turn. We got 3 MSU'd Warp Talons. It's debatable if you bring like a 10-man of these, and I do think that's like, I need to do more testing. A 10-man's probably worth it, man, because that helps ensure that you get your uppy-downy there, so very strong there. Like I mentioned way earlier, we got 2 Havocs, so one with las cannons, one with chain cannons. The las cannon, you give a melta. The chain cannons, you just give a plasma gun. Should be obvious what these guys do. Anti-tank, anti-infantry, especially for orcs. That's where it'll get especially well there. I had some points left over, so I just brought 2 MSU Legionary squads. I gave them a Rhino to jump into. By the way, I should mention the other Havocs can jump into their own Rhino as well, which is great. It's got the firing port, so he'll actually give you some like real firepower. And then I noticed as the list was coming together, like, damn man, I need some anti-tank, like heavily. So I threw some Predators in there. Predators, assuming they stay at the same points, which I assume they will, around the same points, 130, they were a steal at 130. Never, ever, ever forget you got sustained hits and all that. You give them las cannons. So this is the autocannon version. So I think it's like pretty well like shown at this point that the autocannon version is the best one. You get the +1 AP if you're shooting at infantry. So I brought them with the las cannons, again, to help shore up my anti-tank. Now, there is certainly debate if you should bring Vindicators instead somehow. You would have to drop some units, like shuffle some stuff around, but Vindicators are one of the best units in the book, assuming they stay at 175, and so I could certainly see changing that. I could also see bringing in Forge Fiends. I'll be honest though, with the Vindicators being a theme, Forge Fiends at 200, like, I'm not that sold on them currently, so I do have questions about that. Either way, this is like a general, this is just like a stock like Dread Talon list, I would think. Again, you got 2 Cultist Firebrand just going on their own, and the one with the Cultists. You don't have to attach them to squads if you don't need to. Cultists belong in most lists, almost every list. I like this a lot. I would have fun playing it, especially like, it doesn't seem especially like overpowered to me or anything. Seems pretty fluffy with all the jump pack infantry. I would have fun bringing this to like a game at my friend's house, and for how much like mobility it has and whatnot, I think it could do okay in a tournament as well. So I do enjoy this list. Again, they're posted in the description below if you guys want to look at them. Better yet, like mod them, change them to how you would prefer to play them. Next up, so the next 2 are relatively similar, and they both revolve, not necessarily revolve, but they both bring allies. That was like the thing. Oh, that's right. My initial goal with them was, what if I do my best, or like, I'm maxing out the leadership debuffs and the forcing battle shocks. Not necessarily maxing them out, but I'm bringing like way more than I was with the other list. So, this goes Nurgle. So we got the Sloppity and the Poxbringer. And Plague Bearers, I think they're a fantastic unit. When I play Demons, I love Plague Bearers. And this also let me cut out the Cultists. So in a sense, in a weird workaround way, they're almost like a 50-point discount on one of them, because you don't have to bring the Cultists. They're damn tough. It's 20 T5 wounds for 110 points. Like, that's not bad at all. So, bring the Nurgle in there. Still kept the Firebrands. If they do get a fair price, if they are 40 points, better yet, like 35, that'd be fantastic. 30, I'd like lose my mind. I do think they're valid just on their own. We still got the 10-man Raptors, but this time I gave Harken. Harken just gives them a little bit of oomph. You don't get the free battle tactic or any of that sort of stuff, and you also can't really give them the relic, but that's where the other squads are for. So I brought 3 10-man Raptors. These guys are going balls out on the on the jump back infantry. How fun is that, by the way? Very like thematic. Still got the 3 MSU Warp Talons. Can't really get rid of them. I did Obliterators. This heavily depends on their points, even though, so this is assuming they're 180. If they truly were 180, honestly, I'd probably dump them for maybe a Vindicator, or, you know, there's plenty of different units you can choose from. That's 2 90-point units you can choose from. And then finally, we got the Demon Prince. Run him as Corn for the Strength 10, and then his big thing is A, to like tear stuff up in melee, but also he can force the battle shocks as well. I think this is a fun little list to try for sure. Lastly, we got the Tzeentchian version, which does make a few other changes. Get over here so I can actually see ya. Alright, Warp Talon, or Dread Talons 3. Alright, so like I said, very similar. The big change was I dropped the Obliterators, and I brought, I believe these are, las cannon Havocs. So everything, most of the other is the same. And then I brought 2 blue horrors. You got the Changeling, and then Changecaster. It's debatable if you attach him to the blue horrors or not. I think you probably do, just so he has 10 extra wounds on top. That also split, by the way, like, gets pretty nuts there. So, yeah, again, very similar. Main difference is the Havocs, and then obviously the Tzeentchian units. I'd be curious your guys' thoughts. The first list I like a lot. Like, I would have no problem running the first list. The second one with Nurgle, ooh, does it edge out Tzeentch? I'm not so sure. I definitely need to practice with them. Either way, again, I just want to give you guys some like ideas that you can run with. Hopefully this, yeah, gives you, you know, a couple examples of lists you could run. Again, guys, so I would very much love to hear your guys' opinions on Dread Talons and just CSM as a whole. If you have any questions, if I got something wrong, especially, like, definitely bring that up. Yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Oh, okay. I should have brought this up way earlier, but just, and this is like very end of the video, I'm going to bring it up. Yeah, anyways, a couple really quick tips. So never forget that popping transports automatically causes a battle shock. Any units that jump out are battle shocked. On top of that, maybe you get lucky, like cross your fingers, and they lose a model or two from the mortal wounds they take from an exploded transport, and therefore they're under starting strength. Suddenly they're taking battle shock every turn. So never ever forget that. The Screaming Descent Bomb, I think, is going to be a huge deal. So even a relatively expensive unit like this, so you got Harkin and 10 Raptors, it's fine, man. If you need to steal an objective from your opponent's home objective, you can plop these guys in within 3. Hopefully you out-objective control them at that point. Suddenly they got to, like, turn around, come back at you. Sure, you're probably going to lose the squad eventually, but if it's late in the game, turn 4 or something, well, turn 3 or something like that, like, the odds of that happening are pretty slim. So Screaming Descent Bomb, play around with that. I mentioned it earlier, even just a cheap 5-man squad you can use for move blocking, forcing the battle shocks on your opponent's like entire army. You'd be surprised how much coverage 5 miles can get when they have a 12-inch bubble on top of that. A lot of use there. And then the uppy downy bomb, that's going to be extremely common. I'd assume any and every like Night Lord list, almost every single one's going to have an uppy downy bomb, where basically at the end of each opponent's turn, they're just going to go into reserve and come down where you need them. Keys off the Screaming Descent you got as well. Very, very, very powerful there. Anyways, guys, hope you guys got some useful tips out of this. Hopefully gives you some like fun ideas on lists you can try on your end. Again, let me know your suggestions below. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you guys all for watching. Good luck out there. Ab Dominus Nox, and have a great rest of your night.